G'day mate and welcome to Anno 117 Pax Romana with me, GD. Now first I have to make some disclaimers. This is a sponsored event, not sponsors in Ubisoft paid me, but as in I was given access to an exclusive pre-release build of the game. Secondly, I will mention no money exchanged hands, and Ubisoft did not put any limitations on what I could or could not say about the game or my experience, which I will mention right at the start was a remote play session, which means I was not recording on my own hardware, and I had latency with all my inputs, so don't expect any smooth camera movements. Also, I will mention, I wasn't allowed to look and record any of the settings menus, so I couldn't change the volume, which means the volume in this video is not going to be how I would exactly like it. Also, the game was displayed in 1440p, but the stream the recording done on the host computer was only at 1080, not the normal 4K I use. And you will see from some of the footage, it had some pretty grotesque watermarks across it, which means this is going to be a fairly short video on my thoughts and my first impressions of the Anno 117 Pax Romana game that is due out, I believe, at the end of 2025. So if you're interested in the Anno series, you can look forward to that. Now, the Anno series I've been recommended many times, but I've spent a few hundred hours in Anno 1800, and I decided it wasn't really the game for me. But I do believe that was over 8 years ago, because there's no good evidence of Anno 1800 here on the channel. So I expect everything I know about Anno, I've forgotten by now. Also, I will mention this video didn't come out when the embargo dropped, because I actually want to check with a couple of other creators I know who have played Anno a lot, know the game back to front and front to back, and I want to get a second opinion on some of the features I saw before I publish this particular video. As I said, I'm a little bit out of the loop on Anno, but like I said, it was an exclusive event. I think I was one of 4 invited in Australia to come look at, well, the early pre-release build. So, during the bit over the first 4 hours playtest, I did manage to fly through the tutorial. I did manage to go broke and start again, but on the second time around, I remembered a bit more of how to play the game, and it did get an update, which removed the, as I said, the grotesque watermark that you're probably looking at now. Now, the first feature I want to mention is, right at the start of the game, as I was flying through the tutorial, and remembered a couple of key features of the Anno series, I did come across the very first thing I noticed, which you no longer had to put all your buildings on a square grid. You could now offset things at a 45-degree angle. Also, it turns out, I stumbled across it somewhere along the way, you could actually build roads that are round or curved, which is definitely going to change things a little bit as far as the Anno series is concerned. After playing for about the first hour, I did manage to turn myself into a tiny little profitable town, but I also came through across a couple of features that I don't believe I've seen before. The first one was the ability to bulk move houses and bulk move things. Obviously, in Anno series, we've had the feature for quite some time. We could relocate an existing building, but being able to relocate a whole heap of them at once, I definitely don't remember that. The other thing I managed to stumble onto just a couple of seconds later was the ability to unlock research. Research came with the second tier of people, and also got us the ability to get into the tech tree. Tech tree is something that's definitely new to the Anno series, and gave us a couple of new insights into where the game's actually going to be going. As you can see, the technology tree is split into 3 branches. We have the economic, the civil, and the military. And each of these require a certain amount of knowledge, which is going to take you a certain amount of time for your citizens to accumulate. I did find the ability that I can start upgrading things with a little bit of research, rather than looking for, well, special wonders or paying for upgrades, was a different way of playing the game, and I do think I'm going to find this a lot more enjoyable if I look at Anno again in the future. After looking through research for a little while, I did stumble upon religion. I do believe religion was in the game previously, but the different perks I could get from the different religious types, or religion types, was definitely an interesting bonus. We could either, boost our woodcutting, boost our harvesting, boost our war efforts, with just a little bit of belief in the right deity. So after completely losing my very first town, I moved on to a second town, a brand new save, and came across a new feature that I also don't remember previously, and that was the ability to blueprint and copy whole segments of the town, which was very handy. As you can see, I duplicated the hemp farm and the spinner very quickly, and if we scroll down to my docks, you can see I have a number of new fisheries set up ready to go, but they just haven't been enabled for construction yet. I don't actually need that extra production just yet, but it does let me plan an awful lot ahead, or make sure I can have the roads set up to be nice and straight for when I want them, for when we get to building ships in the future. Next thing I want to mention with the blueprint tool is the ability to, well, quickly blueprint parts of the town and then make sure that everything's in the correct ranges before you then go through and, well, mass build a section of blueprint. It does mean that life is a whole lot easier, especially when you're trying to expand rapidly, or maybe you've finally made the ultimate build and you just want to pop it together. Yeah, also, maybe occasionally you get a fire and you need to relocate quickly. You're, firefighters. That's always a possibility. Yeah, don't mention the fire. It probably didn't cause any losses in the town. It was fine. It was in the bathhouse, I believe. The next thing I want to mention whilst the fire is going on, apologise for the not so smooth camera movement, is one of the things I really hoped for in Anno was the ability to get in close on the action. The devs have always put a lot of time and a lot of effort into the animations of every single person, every single action inside the town, every person walking around, and it's one of the things I really wish I could get in on and have a close-up view. I do understand that there was a debug menu available in earlier versions of Anno that lets you get down to ground view. I could not find the ability to do that inside Anno 1717 in my first playthrough, but I did stumble upon it somewhere along the line. Next thing I want to mention very quickly, something I don't remember existing in Anno 1800 when I last played it, was actual production stats. You could see what your production was, what your demand was, which is something that probably led me away from Anno and on to Factorio, where the production stats actually matter, and they actually matter a whole lot. So I did have a chance to have a look through those, see how they worked. Obviously, I didn't have a long timeline to look at due to the limited playtest, but it was definitely something that a little bit more open to looking at Anno 1717 in the future. I do need to mention the quests and also the decisions you make as a governor will affect the happiness or the state of the whole island. These are these things that I sort of enjoyed in some regards and I also didn't enjoy in others. I do remember during my playtest I had to find 8 barrels of wine by scrolling around somebody else's island and randomly clicking on things. It did have the watermarks across the screen in that particular part of the quest, which meant finding 8 water barrels was not exactly the easiest thing to do. Not a particular quest I did enjoy, as long as they don't pop up too often, I guess I can live with them. But having other quests like this where I could get a little prestige and a little bit of happiness for forcing a lovely blonde-haired daughter to marry a senator, or I could get a little bit of happiness by allowing her to marry her lover, and lose a little bit of prestige was also an option. Brilliant. At the time, I did have a minus 300 happiness, so it was pretty much a no-brainer. Next up, I will mention trade routes and the world map. This was one of those things that I found was a little bit easier to set up than it was in previous Anno games. This was something that definitely frustrated me in previous games, but also we can see the world map here is decently sizable. I actually have a feeling it's larger than what I remember from 1800. Last couple of things I want to mention when I was ending up my playtest was, I went on a little bit of pirate hunting. I had a good little time taking my not terribly powerful ship going and sinking as many pirates as I could. Really wish I got a little bit more loot from them or something. But at the same time, I did have a small problem back at home, and that was, a little bit of rioting. It turns out I'd spent a little bit of time not taking care of my wonderful little town and not paying enough attention and patting the heads of the peasants that serve below me. So a couple of them got a little bit upset. I could have quickly put this riot to rest. Instead, I chose to let the riot get out of control and see what would actually happen because I was coming to the end of my playtest. Turns out the riots never got completely out of control, so I finally caved and put down a couple of little police services which took care of the rioters one way or another. Yeah. But with all that said, this brings me to the end of my quick playtest of Anno 1717. What are my thoughts? Well, it feels very, very much like an Anno game. It does have not only new features, like, as I said, the research tree, also definitely looks a little bit easier to set up trading, because trading and shipping is a big part of the Anno Foundation. But in saying that, I am actually most interested looking at the combat going forth, because that's one of the things that I definitely sorely missed from earlier Anno games. Also, I should mention I'm very, very much looking forward to being able to zoom down and stand on the footpath and be able to take screenshots and also thumbnails from the footpath point of view, looking at some of these buildings and how the people interact. I think that's one of the big things that I really, really wish was part of every single Anno game. If the developer's going to put that much time and that much effort into, making sure that the game is as pretty as possible, I'd like to be able to experience that. But after 4 hours worth of playtesting, I did manage to get a profitable town that was mostly happy, you know, at a small fire risk, but we mostly put that to the end, and I'm definitely interested in looking further into the research tree. But with all that said and done, as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Do hope you've enjoyed this little preview and my thoughts on Anno 117, and I will see you in the next part of our Roman Empire.